consent joke on here.
Yeah.
We have not got any better. Like, now that I think about it.
No, still not in regards to anyone specific.
No, it's still
General
just
absurd ideas.
general shit. Woody Allen, get the heat off us.
Oh my God, we're monsters.
Woody Allen.
What have we done?
Woody Allen, though. So, I don't know if you've been watching the Woody Allen, like, I think it's Allen versus Farrow on HBO.
Is it a series? I thought it was.
Yeah, it's a
like
4-part series, a 4-part docu-series or whatever. So it details pretty much Woody Allen, Mia Farrow, their relationship, and it builds what happened to their relationship and also how basically he ends up marrying his stepdaughter and XYZ or whatever, right? So it gives basically a background into how this happened, but also it gives background into Woody Allen and like his past to make sense of like his, I guess, dating decisions in his lifetime and also his alleged.
Does it give like a sympathetic view, or it's just facts? Like, these are the facts and that's it.
I think to me it's 50-50 right now.
Okay.
For the first 2 episodes, it's been 50-50 to me, but these next 2, he might get shitted on like crazy, so I don't know yet. But the reason I wanted to bring this up was because what to you it makes a white crime?
A white crime?
Yeah, like what is something that you could say that, oh, only white people do this?
Shit like embezzlement, Ponzi schemes, hedge
Why?
funds. It's kind of known in those circles. There's not a lot of diversity in those like jobs and circles. It's nothing but white people, so most likely it's a white crime. They commit it the most.
Okay, so I'm going to return to that in a second. Woody Allen, in this documentary, it starts off with him meeting Mia Farrow and their relationship, and then she being a very good mother and adopting all these children from different countries, third world countries, and raising them, and she was great. She meets Woody Allen. He puts her in a bunch of movies. They never get married, but essentially it's like they're partners. Or like right. So, but they live together all this. Well, they live together at points, but he still keeps his house. But they're functioning as a family, but they've never been married. So she adopts more kids, and she eventually adopts, I believe, the little girl at the time. She was a baby at the time, but she adopts her, and it kind of starts with that girl. She talks about, they have the girl, her name's Dylan Farrow. She talks about how, like, at 5, he was so attached to her that it was like uncomfortable. Like, she would go off and like, you know, be around her other brothers and sisters, and he would like watch her. Or eventually Mia Farrow and Woody Allen ended up having a child of their own.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it's really fucked up because he came into the relationship being like, look, I don't want to take care of none of your kids. I don't want kids. I don't want to be around any of these kids. And then she was like, okay. Which I was like, red flag number 1, but whatever. But so they eventually end up having a kid of their own. It's a boy. He wanted a little girl. Didn't get that. He got a boy. So for some reason, when the boy was born, he got even more attached to Dylan, and he would like take her out of the room and just be with her like all day and everything. And at that time, it just felt like, oh, it's just a father with a daughter type situation. But it was like a whole bunch of red flags. So fast forward when she gets a little older, she talked about how he would sleep with her, but he would sleep in his underwear, and she would like also be in her underwear, and he would like hold her super close while they were sleeping, and all these like weird things. Right now, this wasn't something that only Dylan knew about. Mia Farrow also saw this and was like, "Hey, you need to stop. You're being weird." So of course she didn't call the police. She didn't do any of this. She decided to take him to his own therapist to talk about what he was doing. So I guess the big turning point, the thing that scared him was there was a moment where the little girl, Dylan, she was a child, and I guess he was standing over her. Mia Farrow said they were like all in the living room, and he was standing over her, and she was like, all of a sudden he like had hit her hand super hard and like knocked her down to the ground. So she started crying, And then when Mia Farrow looked up, she was like, what the hell? Why'd you do that? And then he was like, she grabbed my penis. And she was like, what? Like, because it's a child, right? It's like, how would they even know, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So she was like, it made no sense that he said that, but also she was like, kids just don't grab penises. Like, they know exactly where to grab.
So
and
he was like put on a show?
Or something where it seemed like she was alluding to, like, this had clearly happened before. Like, you know, without everyone being present. So, they end up going to therapy, and the therapist says, like, no, he's not a sex offender or a pedophile, but he has too much of an attachment to Dylan, and it needs to be monitored. So what I want you to do is, anytime he gets inappropriate or too close to Dylan, I want you to say, like, a certain type of phrase, and then he has to respond with, like, I'm sorry, I got too affectionate, it wasn't sexual. So literally they were doing this, all right?
Yeah, that was fucking weird, because I didn't know the details about it. I remember, like, I know that he married a stepdaughter and all that shit, but I know these details, and I'm getting fucking cringed out.
This is the first episode. I'm already like, what the fuck?
I'm not gonna watch this. This is gross.
Like, so, episode 2, they go into how they end on the cliffhanger of episode 1 where Dylan's talking about how like the
therapy and shit.
Yeah, the therapy, and how she started to go to therapy for it, and how like the inappropriateness kind of continued to happen and everything. And she talked about how she thought she was the only one, but it wasn't until Sue, I think her name is Soo Yin. It wasn't until like that started to come out with her that she was like, oh, it isn't just me. So Mia Farrow had another daughter before Dylan that she adopted, who was from South Korea, but she was the oldest one that she had adopted, I think, ever. So she was like, I think, I want to say like 9 or 10 when she adopted her. So she had like parents couldn't take care of her in South Korea, so she adopted her. Blah blah blah. So they started to get into that relationship, and eventually, Woody Allen and Mia Farrow break up. However, I guess they're separated, but they're still like together in a sense where because he has a kid with her, so they're not. They're still like seeing each other, but kind of just like as parents, not as together, right?
Yeah.
So she talks about she goes to his apartment one day to, I guess, pick up something, and she opens a drawer and she finds all these naked pictures of Soo Yin. And she's like, what the fuck? So she flips out, goes back home. Once again, doesn't tell the police, doesn't do anything, just goes back home. And she told, I guess, one of her friends, and she told them that he can't come to the house. But, of course, he came to the house because he had keys. So he walked in the house, and the first thing she said that he said was, I'm sorry, I want to marry Soo Yin. And then she goes, what? And then
how old is Soo Yin at this point?
16.
Okay.
Like, so she's 16, and she's like, what? And then he's like, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I just thought that it would help the situation. I love you and everything. So
it would help the situation.
So him and Mia Farrow go back and forth, and this is where I was just like, okay, I'm already like annoyed by both of you. Mia Farrow was talking about how she was saying, like, well, what is going on? Do you want to be with me or do you want to be with whatever? And he was like, I want to be with you. And I was like, bitch, there's naked pictures of your daughter. Fuck this dude completely. Like he needs to be like, what do you care about?
I gotta find the reason for this.
Yeah, like, what are you doing, right? So, he was like, I'm sorry, it'll never happen again, whatever. So they eventually end up getting completely separated. However, he's still her one son's actual father.
Right.
At this point, he, I believe, filed custody to be the legal father of Dylan, the other girl that he was like touching all this time, right? So
that's bold.
So he gets, this all happened before all this shit happened. So she was like, oh yeah, of course you can be her father. But now it's like, fuck, right?
Yeah.
So the last part of episode 2 literally ends on, they start to go into Soo Yin and Woody Allen's relationship and talked about how he had an apartment that was literally like 5 minutes away from her high school, and the doorman and the maid talked about how she because it eventually got to how he left Mia Farrow and then he married Sue Yin when she was like, I think, 19. But they talked about how when she was in high school, the doorman and the cleaning lady of his apartment said that she would always come over after school, be up there for hours. The cleaning lady said that she would always go in and have to clean like semen-stained sheets, and there would be condoms everywhere. And she was like, it was only them two in the apartment. So,
yeah,
and of course he denies and said that they didn't have a sexual relationship until she was 18. But all the evidence was like, she was coming over here at 16. You had pictures of her at 16. What the fuck are you talking about and everything, right? So, goes back to Dylan. Dylan, I think, is at this point, I want to say 7 or 8. And she talked about how he had came over and Mia Farrow was going out with her friend, but she specifically told the babysitters who were all there, there was 3 babysitters there, she's told them that, he's going to come spend time with Dylan, and his son's name was Ronan. And she was like, they cannot be left alone, right? But of course,
why is that even like, just say no, you can't come. If you can't be alone, then that's fucking weird.
So he comes there, the babysitter says like she's watching them, and every time he would like hold Dylan or get too close, she'd be like, no, whatever. And then she said somehow, which I was like, all you guys are failures, because she said that they lost track of them, and for like 20 minutes they couldn't find Dylan or Woody Allen. So then later on, when Mia Farrow comes back, she's talking to Dylan, and Mia Farrow was like, she started to film anytime Dylan would talk about her father touching her inappropriately or feeling weird around him, she would film it. So they have the footage of her talking about how they went up into the attic and he touched her private parts, and he lifted up her skirt, took off her underwear, and put his head in her lap and just kept it there. And then she talked about how he got behind her and whatever. You can imagine.
God, I don't want to.
Yeah, exactly. So at this whole time, I'm watching this and I'm like, fuck everybody in this whole thing. All right, what is going on?
Let it happen.
Yeah, I'm like, there's a point where this dude is there's something wrong with him, and he does this shit. But you continuously let it like happen. It's like, nah, it can't be possible. So then the backdrop of episode 2, which I thought was like, what the fuck? So I didn't know Woody Allen's movies. I've never watched them. The only movie I've ever seen with Woody Allen in it is Ants. Because we're younger, right, so we don't like whatever, right? So I don't know any Woody Allen movies except Ants. Obviously, we're younger, so that's the only one that I've ever really known about. But apparently, he is, this huge director that people think is a genius, a comedic genius, and everything like that.
Wait, how fucking gross is it? Like, because by that point, when Ants came out, he was already doing all this shit. Yeah, and it was kind of known.
It's already.
How fucking gross is it that they let him on a kids movie to voice him?
Oh, I'm gonna tell you how. I'm gonna tell you how everyone's to blame for this shit, right? So apparently, Woody Allen, I guess like all his famous movies are all from like the like 70s, 80s, and everything. And I guess his like biggest movie, or the movie that everyone thinks is like artistically amazing, is this movie called Manhattan. So they talked about in the documentary the movie Manhattan. The movie Manhattan is about, at that time, probably like, I think, late 30s or early 40s, Woody Allen, and how this is a real movie, right?
Okay.
How he is in a relationship with a 17-year-old, and they're fucking, they're going out and everything. And if you see like clips of the movie, the way it's like the way it's kind of positioned is Woody Allen is telling this girl like, "Hey, don't be in love with me. You have your whole life ahead of you. Date someone your age.
Wow.
Date someone in high school." And these are real quotes from this fucking movie.
Controlling the narrative.
She's like, no, but I love you. She's like, we're great together. She was like, the sex is great. And like, this girl is 17 saying this shit in this movie.
Was that different back then?
I don't give a shit. It's still weird.
It is weird.
I'm like, what part of this makes any sense? Right? So then it got even deeper. Right? So apparently, all of Woody Allen's movies, like I'd say like 90% of them, they all have an undertone of older man, younger woman. They went down like the list of all his movies. Older man, younger woman. To make
those quotes that you were saying though, like in that movie, it
right.
sounds like someone trying to convince themselves. Like these are the conversations I'm having in my head when I'm talking to the current 16-year-old.
To make matters even worse, apparently Woody Allen has a whole like hall dedicated to him at Princeton. They went into the little library area, or the hall is what they call it at Princeton, and apparently he donated like all like scripts that didn't make it, scripts that turned into like the big ass movies and everything. 90% of those scripts all involved like the lead girl was either 17, 18, 19, or 20. They had the rewrites where the girl was 16 in all these like love romantic comedy movies.
God, dude.
This is all like in Princeton, like they have all this shit. No one said anything.
God.
Right? To make matters even worse. So apparently Woody Allen, he wrote like his, I don't know if it was like memoirs or like autobiography came out last year. So they have, which is why this documentary I think is so hilarious, because they have him narrating excerpts from his book. And he goes into the Soo-Yin relationship, and he talked, the way he framed it was insane. He was like, one night I took her to a basketball game, and we love going to basketball games together. But one night I took her to a basketball game, and then she came up to my room after the game. He was like, we were sitting down watching TV, and then she leaned in and kissed me. And then I said, no, he was like, and then he said something took over me, and I leaned in and kissed her. And she said, oh, finally you made a move. And I was like,
this is a memoir?
This is in the book that he does the audio book for. So he's saying this.
Wow.
And I was like,
that is insane.
I was like, you know what, guys? Y'all sat here and when that fucking bullshit Leaving Neverland documentary came out, we had to talk about it and everyone had their opinion on it and everything like that. None of that shit that they were talking about in that documentary was ever factual at all. It was all stuff that they talked about, but
right, alluded to
and everything, but there was nothing on Michael Jackson. Again, it's public knowledge that the FBI was watching him for like 10 years, didn't find a fucking thing, right? So you can say whatever you want. You can either say that the FBI did a shitty job, or you can just be like, wow, he didn't do it.
Right.
That's it, right? However, this dude knowingly is like, it's years of this behavior, and no one did anything. Like, it was just normal. It was like, oh,
it was out in the open. Too.
Yeah,
it wasn't no hiding around. It's hidden on some fucking file or whatever.
My mind has been blown ever since this shit, because I'm like, fam.
Because I knew he was creepy and like that was disgusting, but I didn't know it was like this.
It's like out in the open, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, how did no one say, "Yo, get this dude the fuck out of here"? And like every movie that involved a younger girl and then like an older man, if it was him or another older lead, it was always positioned as the girl just loved the older man. He tried so hard to get her away,
right?
But he was just so much for her. He was so much experienced and all these things. And I was like, you don't see the red flags and all this shit.
The crazier thing, too, beyond fucking people not seeing it, is the fact that his perceived reality, that's how it was happening. He wasn't the one initiating anything. It was always the person coming up to them, and they just wanted me so bad, and I couldn't resist, and that's his reality.
There was a part in the documentary where Dylan talked about how he coached her on how to suck his thumb. And he coached her on how to, like, where to put her mouth, how to use her tongue. And then she talked about how someone once had called him out on it and was like, hey, Like, why is she doing that? And then he just shut her down.
Someone saw?
He just shut her down real quick and said, like, oh no, she likes this. It soothes her.
What?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You got caught in the act, and that was the best excuse?
Sorry. Like, I know this might, like, piss people off or everything like that, but look, everyone who was around that situation who knew what was going on are as much to blame as him. Because to me, you're allowing you're allowing shit to happen.
Different story when like they hit it so well, couldn't tell. But man, doing out in the open, not giving a fuck.
Like Mia Farrow seems like such a lovely lady and everything from this documentary. Of course, I do not know her personally, but every time that this dude got caught being weird, she always was like trying to figure it out or like trying to have some reasoning to it. I'm like, your daughter is telling you that this dude clearly like was being super inappropriate, and I'm assuming stuck his penis inside of her, and it's just like, let me film this because this is so odd. Like, instead of being like, film it, call the police. Look at this.
Not evidence. It's out in the open. Was that just not because what he was? This was like what in the 70s, 80s?
No, when this happened, this is all in the 90s.
It's all in the 90s.
This is the 90s. So when that sexual assault happens, it's the 90s. A couple years later is when he is the pictures, and a couple years later is when I think it's still the 90s when he marries her daughter.
Because I was gonna maybe say the 70s.
It's 95 when they get married.
I was gonna say like in the 70s when like people didn't really want to talk about this stuff. It's hush hush, so nobody says anything, and it's just blah blah blah. But in the 90s,
this is the 90s.
People were, they weren't being hush hush about this shit. And how fucked up is it? Because what's her name, Mia Farrow. Mia Farrow, like, was it because she was in love with Woody that it was like, let me not see this happening or make excuse or figure out why this is happening?
See, I've been trying to like put myself in her headspace to maybe understand it. I'm like, if you really love someone, like,
are you truly blind to this kind of stuff?
Right, or like, are you really trying to get them help? But I'm like, this is
your kids. You adopted them. Like, would it be different if it was like blood related and like, do those instincts not kick in if you just adopt or something? What the fuck?
See, I didn't want to go there, but my mind keeps
her at least.
keeps leaning to. I'm like, did you not care as much because they weren't, quote unquote, your blood kids or whatever?
So you chose the person that you like were in love with over them?
Yeah, because they're not really my kids, and how wrong is it? We don't have the same blood,
right? Exactly.
Like, but I don't know. Like, I don't want to put that on her because, like I said, from everything that I've seen so far, it seems like she was literally like concerned and like shocked about everything. But she talked about after the pictures were found, and she said these are her words. She said that they weren't like Playboy-esque pictures where it's just like, oh, the girl was topless or whatever. She said it was like hustler style, which that means like she was busted open on them pictures. Your 16-year-old daughter got it bust open.
To think that makes it better. To think like, oh no, it wasn't Playboy-esque. It was hustler.
No. What she was saying is like, Playboy would have been better in her eyes. She'd have been like, if it was just her topless, she would have been like, what the hell happened? But she was saying it was dirty, like raunchy, like hustler. That's what I'm saying. So she was probably busting it open.
First off, to even make the comparison is stupid because even if it was Playboy-esque, what the fuck?
This is wrong.
This is crazy. And back then, nudes didn't come first like they do now. No. Nudes was just like, that's like deep in a relationship kind of shit. Oh my god, that's... If they were Playboy, I wouldn't have said anything. I would have just kept them hidden.
Pretty much.
He's an artist.
That's how it came off to me. And then...
What the fuck?
Like, it's just the way he framed everything with him marrying her daughter. He was like, yeah, we just grew an attraction to each other when she was 18, and then it just got hot and heavy, and I realized I loved her, and then we got married. And I'm like, and everyone knowing, like, the history of it is like, fam, you pretty much groomed that girl from however when you came into her life until, like, because it doesn't make any sense what you're talking about. And like I said, they have actual statements of people that worked in his building or worked for him that was like, oh yeah, that girl was around all the time.
There's evidence of sex.
Semen stained sheets constantly.
He was just fucking the bed.
That's all he was doing.
Just the bed alone.
Yeah,
Yeah, man, that's. Oh my god, the details are so gross.
So now, going back to my other question about what's a white crime, I think these are white crimes. I think shit like pedophilia
And getting away with it
is considered a white crime because it's like if you're a minority or whatever, they'll somehow you'll be turned into like the biggest piece of shit ever. We've just seen it. Like, not to say that they aren't, but like R. Kelly is in the position that he's in because of still allegations. Still, sadly, even though we know that these aren't allegations,
right?
But it's still allegations, right? Why is Woody Allen not in the same position? Bill Cosby is in jail right now for shit in the 70s.
With adults, if that makes any difference to anybody.
If it does.
If it really doesn't,
right.
But that's a small distinction.
But still, shit in the 70s, when, again, you can argue, which a lot of people have, in his favor, that was the time period. The shit that was going on. Doesn't make it any better, but I'm just saying that's what they said. However, he got arrested for shit that happened in the 70s. All this shit on Woody Allen happened 70s, 80s, 90s. Why is he still walking around?
So even with all this evidence and shit like that, can anything happen to him now at this point? Like the whole statute of limitations, the whole she's probably not gonna press any charges now that she's an adult. Does that matter at all?
I do not know because I mean that would have been my question for Bill Cosby, but it still happened. I want to know how because he's a free man today. So I'm like, what loopholes did he cross in this to make it? Because obviously his wife isn't gonna tell on him because they're married to this day. Right. So she ain't gonna say like, oh, I was whatever. She ain't gonna say that. However, there's still his child that this happened to, and there's literally like when they say like mountains of evidence, there's mountains of evidence. It's all over TV.
Physical evidence.
Yeah,
too. It's not like
all
some
here.
Hidden eyewitness like interview shit.
And that's why I'm just like, I want to see the next 2 episodes to see where this unfolds, but. Fam, I'm confused because I'm like, where the hell is like the trending cancel Woody Allen hashtags and everything? I feel like every day there's a cancel Bill Cosby, cancel R. Kelly shit. Every day when those documentaries and shit was coming out, it's like
did he kind of disappear?
No,
after like he didn't make any movies. He wasn't really.
I thought he did. I was like, okay, so he had a run in the. Fucking 60s and 70s, and then made a couple other films.
Like he just chills.
And he just
with
chills.
His money.
No, apparently this dude has still been making movies just fine. Apparently, oh damn it, I forgot her name. I know that she's friends with Johnny Depp's ex. I think her name is Elizabeth Olsen. I want to say.
Maybe I'm not sure.
Maybe, but they talked about how she was cast as the female lead in one of Woody Allen's recent movies, and they talked about how she stuck up for Woody Allen, but then when Kobe died, called Kobe a rapist. After once again, stuff that again is factual. We have the court statements on that.
Right. Where nothing happened.
No,
he got accused.
And then the girl said
evidence.
The girl said like, no, it was all consensual. XYZ, all this shit happened. But no, he's a rapist, and who cares about him dying? But you did a movie with Woody Allen, who clearly
groomed a little girl.
It has a whole history. It's like
that is some fucked up shit. Because there's pedophiles where they just fuck the kids, right? That's really fucked up. But it's another level to like groom them into marrying you.
That's why my line of questioning earlier when I was saying like, what if your mind just goes there? And I honestly think because Woody Allen looks like such a frail, losery character. No, because this went into...
No, yeah, he is.
Yeah, but this went into like what they were saying. Like they were saying because his character, he's such like he's the awkward, nervous, like loser dude that you can't put yourself mentally and be like, he doesn't do this. I'm like,
no one's really like this.
Exactly. Like, and I'm like, no, he is. Like, he's giving you every bit of the clues.